The city of Uvalde, Texas, the site of the Robb Elementary massacre, has now hired a private law firm in order to help them block the release of documentation on the grounds that it could be highly embarrassing. Gee, I wonder why. So now let me get to the details here. Vice News has obtained a letter sent by Attorney General Cynthia Trevino, I'm sorry, not Attorney General, attorney, who works for the private law firm Denton, Navarro, Rocha, Bernal, and Zeck to the Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton that is asking him to make a determination about what information the town, let's see, the town is required to make available to public records requests from the media. So the media is asking a lot of questions. They're saying, hey, we're going to file some Freedom of Information Act requests to see what happened, why there was such a massive police breakdown when it came to the response to the Uvalde massacre, to the shooter in that elementary school. Again, 19 children died, 3 adults. So now, the letter states that there are records being requested by media outlets that involve matters such as city employees' past criminal records. Although Vice News writes that the letter is composed in such a way that it is impossible to say what records in particular the city and the police are referring to. So, wait, criminal records? Shouldn't the average person have a right to know if the leaders in the city had been, for example, caught with doing corruption, have criminal records related to that, or, I mean, you would think that it would be in the public interest, but no, they said no, because it's too embarrassing. Very, very curious. Now, Christopher Schneider, a professor of sociology at Brandon University, told Vice News that he is, quote, wary of their excuses. They claim that the compilation of individuals' criminal history is highly embarrassing information, which is a strange cover. The embarrassing information is the inept police response. Again, that would be embarrassing if it hadn't taken the lives of 19 children and 3 adults and wounded 17 others that now have to deal with this for the rest of their lives in a country, by the way, that doesn't even guarantee health coverage. So you're a victim of a mass shooting. Guess what? You have to pay the bills for your medical care to save your life after getting shot. That's an insane system. And by the way, not everybody talks about that. Not enough people point out how ridiculous that is. Just the fact that we don't have healthcare, and by the way, we don't even have healthcare for victims of mass shootings, things that are not their fault. It's horrifying, horrifying. But again, the correct word isn't, embarrassing. It's actually tragic. Incredibly tragic, and tragic incompetence. All right, so now, let me note that one of the people that are on the city council who probably made this decision is Pete Arredondo. So Pete Arredondo was the officer that was in charge of the response. He was there on that day. And then afterwards, took office. This man was elected. Now, Arredondo has already faced a mountain of criticism, of course, for the complete and utter breakdown of the situation and his cowardice, and the cowardice of the rest of the police in the face of a mass shooter, which, by the way, protocol states that if there is a mass shooter, you go in without backup and do everything you can to take that shooter down. They did not do that. They waited outside the door for over an hour. He made a mountain of terrible decisions that day, one of which intentionally ditching his radio. That's information that came out earlier this week. Now, that seems, of course, like a very important thing to have if you're in command, to try to give orders, to communicate. But he told the Texas Tribune that the choice to ditch his radio was, get this one, tactical. Hey, it was tactical. The radio, it would slow me down, or it would hit me as I ran. That's you're going with that one?
Bullshit.
That is probably the worst excuse I have ever heard. Oh no, you see what happened here is the radio. See, I had to drop it because the radio, it makes you less aerodynamic. That's what it is. Look, I'm not exactly built for speed, so I need every advantage that I get that I can get. You know, why? Why would you need that? The shooter was literally barricaded in a classroom. It's not like they were doing a running gun battle throughout the school. This is a complete and total farce. In fact, police tactics expert Steve Ayame told the Tribune that he has never heard anything like that in his entire life. Officers, he says, are, quote, literally trained to take their radios everywhere, and for good reason. You would need a radio to give commands, and by the way, also to talk to dispatch, who is getting calls, frightened calls from children that were trapped inside that inside those classrooms, that were begging for their lives. Please help us, come save us, do something, get us out of here. And they did absolutely nothing. Arredondo also claimed that he had not known that he was the incident commander on the scene. Right? Oh, sure. Well, I mean, how'd you know that if you didn't have your radio on you that you immediately ditched? He also explained that he had been foiled by a locked door, wasting time praying as they tried upwards of 24 keys. Now, I asked before, why were school resource officers, why did they not have the keys on them? Why did they have to go flag down a janitor? That's very strange. And by the way, couldn't they have busted down the door? Oh, you know what? They couldn't. Because it appears that the school had been hardened against mass shootings. You know, hardened doors that they couldn't bust through. Huh. Now wait a minute. That's the very idea that people like Ted Cruz, Ken Paxton, Greg Abbott, and all the talking heads in conservative media said would have stopped a shooter. But actually that made it worse. It made it so that the police couldn't get in there. That he was able to barricade himself inside of that room and murder students with impunity as these idiots sat out there outside the door dicking around with keys. Arredondo also explained why he was silent for over 2 weeks, 16 days following the shooting. He said, it was not my desire to compound collective grief or to cast blame. Who would we cast blame on for the response? Now, obviously, of course, a lot of the blame goes to the shooter himself, obviously. But the police response, there's a lot of blame there, too. A lot of blame. But look, overall, this guy, homeboy, was ducking reporters for over 2 weeks. Literally. That's the guy who was elected to city council. They elected him. Now, I'm going to guess, in his position of power in the city council, he's probably one of the major voices behind not releasing the information, trying to block the information. Now, getting back to this report, right? The Vice report says that the city is trying to block access to a broad swath of records, including body camera footage, photos, 911 calls, emails, text messages, criminal records, and more. So now, wait a minute. One of their main arguments is, well, not only is it embarrassing, but, it's just not relevant to the public. You're saying that the body cam footage isn't relevant to your response, what you are being criticized for? What's on those tapes? What's on those tapes? That is so incredibly embarrassing. Again, they may have been entirely too honest about this when they said, of course, there's embarrassing stuff on there. Yeah. No kidding. Now, again, a whole bunch of other excuses as well as to why they can't honor the requests from the media. Again, that's funny because the cops usually get whatever embarrassing information they want, even if it's not related to an investigation or a crime. For example, in a lot of cases we've seen where unarmed black men get shot and killed by police, it's pretty common. It's basically expected for a report to come out from the police later saying, "Oh, see, look, we arrested this guy for possession. He once smoked marijuana, and so obviously he was no angel." Yeah. So now Schneider also goes on to say this about that. Quote, "They have no problem using information like that against individuals or of the public. The information disclosure needs to go both ways, if that's the case. Disciplinary or criminal records from members of the police, for example, would be obviously relevant public information in a case in which the police response has been highly criticized." You would think. You would think. But again, police apparently not thinking. Or the only thing they're thinking about is covering their own ass. But they want us to back the blue. Without question. Without question. No deal. No deal on that. Now, he also says, this is back to Schneider, "It's rather ripe to say any of this is not of legitimate public concern. The whole country is trying to figure out how to not allow this to happen again." He also added the police were conflating different kinds of information together in order to try to suppress the legitimate stuff. Quote, "If it's an officer's email to his wife, yeah, we don't need to see that." Well, I mean, do we, though? I mean, look, we all are aware of the stat, or we should be, that like 40% of police officers have done spousal abuse, have beaten their wives. So I don't know, maybe we might need to see that. I don't know. But he says, look, the body-worn camera footage is of concern, at least in this case. So, again, relevant. But we see what they're doing, right? And, of course, it's absolutely disgusting. The city is trying to make sure that instead of getting some sort of justice and accountability for the deaths of those children, you know, because, look, yes, while the shooter, of course, is the main person, you can't exactly get justice out of him. He's already dead. But like for the cops, accountability, it does matter. And instead of getting accountability for the police's terrible reaction to this, the city is trying to shield bad cops and bad politicians. And look, you know, it's Rage in the Machine Against the Machine said it best. You know, some of those at work forces are the same that burn crosses.